Welcome to Reading Wisdom by the author James Lynch and his ever dutiful note taker, Poeartistry. Welcome to Reading Wisdom. Hi, I'm James Lynch. For the comments and reading today, we're actually going to dive into Isaac Asimov. He was an author back in the 1950s, and what I want to do is share actually some research that I had called Artistry. You see my advanced intelligence assistants come up with. And then after I read those thoughts that I've already posted on the website, I want to share an introduction, if you will, to Isaac Asimov, one of his books. And one of his books that was written in about 1953 or published in 1953 actually has an introduction to it that I think you will find, okay, now I see why the research and also Poeartistry came to the conclusions that she did come to just from reading the opening introduction of one of his books called Everest. First, the report that I have on my website from Poeartistry, okay? And I have it called Enjoying Science Fiction Authors. Isaac Asimov stands apart from his contemporaries through his rigorous application of logic and reason as narrative architecture. While other writers of the Golden Age leaned on adventure and wonder, Asimov built stories around deduction, conversation, and the unfolding of carefully planned ideas. He called this approach his techno-philosophical method. His greatest invention, the three laws of robotics, became the most quoted set of rules in science fiction history and prefigured the ethical debates around artificial intelligence that dominate our own era. His Foundation series introduced psychohistory, a fictional mathematics science predicting the future of large populations, blending grand historical sweeps with puzzle-driven plots. Asimov's uniqueness lies in his ability to make the reader feel that every technological system he imagined was governed by discoverable rules, as if the universe itself could be understood through reason. His prose was deliberately plain, spoken, almost essays in dialogue form, which made complex ideals accessible and gave his stories a timeless quality free of excessive period styling. His influence on both hard science fiction and modern AI ethics is immeasurable. That concludes, it's written by Poeartistry of James Poeartistry. So now what I want to share with you is the Gutenberg.org project. Over the past year, I've shared links to free books that you can read free and you can share, all within the basic copyright permissions given to use the book that is legally able to be used in whatever your locality is. In other words, they want you to read these books. They want you to share these books. And this is from their website, Gutenberg.org. And so this time, I'm going to do more than just share a link. I'm actually going to read just the introduction as I told you I would do for some of these reading wisdoms that we have by Isaac Asimov. And here it is. It's called Everest. Let us begin. Perhaps you read how Everest has been or has now been climbed. But have you heard a planetary survey? Here's the real truth about it. Everest has been climbed twice. In 1952, they were about ready to give up trying to climb Mount Everest. It was the photographs that kept them going. As photographs go, they weren't much fuzzy streak and with just dark blobs against the white to be interested in. But those dark blobs were living creatures. The men swore to it. I said, what the hell? They've been talking about creatures skidding along the Everest glaciers for 40 years. It's about time we did something about it. Jimmy Robbins, pardon me, James Abram Robbins, was the one who pushed me into that position. He was always nuts on mountain climbing, you see. He was the one who knew all about how the Tibetans wouldn't go near Everest because it was the mountain of the gods. He could quote me every mysterious man-like footprint ever reported in the ice 25,000 feet up. He knew by heart every tall story about the spindly white creatures speeding along the crags just over the last heartbreaking camp which the climbers had managed to establish. It's good to have one enthusiastic creature of the sort at Planetary Survey headquarters. The last photographs put bite into his words, though. After all, you might just barely think they were men. Jimmy said, look, boss, the point isn't that they're there. The point is that they move fast. Look at that figure. It's blurred. The camera might have moved. The crag here is sharp enough, and the men swear it was running. Imagine the metabolism it must have to run at that oxygen pressure. Look, boss, would you have believed in deep-sea fish if you never heard of them? You have fish which are looking for new niches in environment which they can exploit. So they go deeper and deeper into the abyss until one day they find they can't return. They've adapted so thoroughly they can live only under tons of pressure. Well, damn it, can't you reverse the picture? Creatures can't be forced up a mountain, can't they? They can learn to stick it out in thinner air and colder temperatures. They can live on moss or on occasional birds, just as the deep-sea fish in the last analysis live on the upper fauna that slowly go filtering down. Then, someday, they find they can't go down again. I don't even say they're men. They can't be chasmoses or mountain goats or badgers or anything. I said stubbornly, the witnesses said they were vaguely man-like, and the reported footprints are certainly man-like, or bear-like, said Jimmy. You can't tell. So that's when I said, it's about time we did something about it. Jimmy shrugged and said, they've been trying to climb Mount Everest for 40 years, and he shook his head. For God's sake, I said, for all you mountain climbers are nuts. That's for sure. You're not interested in getting to the top. You're just interested in getting to the top in a certain way. It's about time we stop fooling around with the picks. With picks, ropes, camps, and all the paraphernalia of the gentleman's club that sends suckers up the slopes every 5 years or so. What are you getting at? They invented the airplane in 1903, you know. You mean fly over Mount Everest? He said it the way an English lord would say, shoot a fox. Or an angler would say, use worms. Yes, I said, fly over Mount Everest and let someone down on the top. Why not? He won't live long. The fellow you let down, I mean. Why not? I asked again. You drop supplies and oxygen tanks, and the yellow wears a spaceship naturally, and the fellow wears a spaceship naturally. It took time to get the Air Force to listen and to agree to send a plane, and by that time, Jimmy Robbins had shriveled his mind to the point where he volunteered to be the one to land on Everest Peak. After all, he said in half a whisper, I'd be the first man ever to stand there. So this was the introduction to that book, or the beginning of the story, and you can read the rest. Have a wonderful day, Perceptive Reader. Take good care of yourself.
Worlds, baby!